Amber, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate it. This is awesome. So I guess the first thing I thought I'd do maybe just to kind of share a little bit about your story and background, just to give people an idea. I know you've done probably a lot more than even I know in real estate, and so maybe that'll kind of set the foundation for the conversation.
Sure. Where do you want to start?
So what got you into real estate? What was kind of the first driver?
Oh man. Well, I had a kid at a very, very, very young age. Well, I think young. And my dad said, "Well, what are you gonna do?" And I said, "I think I'm gonna get my real estate license. Could you buy real estate?" And that was my 20-year-old mindset. And so I did. I got my real estate license because he buys real estate, and I learned one thing really quickly, and it was if you want to be successful in this field, you have to know all facets of real estate. You don't have to like all facets, you don't actually have to do all facets of real estate, but in our at least economy, the market changes so often. And if you're really good at being a listing agent or really good at being a buyer's agent, and you don't know short sales and you don't know REOs and you don't know flips and stuff like that, when those markets come, you're kind of floundering. And if I'm going to be a single mom and make this successful, I couldn't flounder, right? I had to know. So I did. I learned farming. I learned door knocking. I did open houses every single day. I created farm campaigns and door knock campaigns and went out on the streets with other agents. I got heavily involved in the Association of Realtors. And I worked for an REO agent, a short sale agent. I negotiated short sales for over 70 agents in Sacramento, and grew to like the REO side of things a little more and the short sale negotiation side of things a little more, and was approached by an investor in 2009, and asked if I would do some of his short sale negotiations. And then it kind of led to, will you do all my transaction coordination? And then it kind of led to, will you be my agent? And then it was, will you help me find properties? And then we created a hedge fund, and the rest is kind of history.
Wow, that's amazing, and that's great advice, and that's a huge nugget. Just to dive in with both feet, learn everything you can. I mean, I was thinking about this before the call. I'm almost not embarrassed, but I kind of like pull back a little bit when I tell people. In fact, just to be honest, I usually don't tell people I've been doing this for 30 years. I'll say, yeah, I've been doing it 20 plus years, because just 30 years, you seem like a dinosaur. But I did my first flip in 91. And I was at this event last week, and it's just, you just continue to learn, and it just evolves, and nothing, thank God, nothing stays the same.
Right. Yep.
That's great advice. Another thing that kind of stuck in my mind is I want to say we started kind of working together a little bit mid last year, and it was not the second half of last year. And I'd asked you how many deals you did. I think you said like 47 or something. So
Yeah.
maybe let's unpack that a little bit. What's your current, I guess, business structure, and how's your kind of, if you want to call it, go to market strategy?
Um, well, right now we haven't really switched gears. We're still buying and flipping, but we're doing a lot more buying and holds and Airbnbs. We've actually dove into some Airbnbs over the last 12 months, and really found a pretty good niche with that. Especially being able to pay almost fair market value for homes and make them pencil out as an Airbnb. Um, but in regards to my flips, in our current industry where we're at right now, getting permits has seemed to be a little challenging, a lot more challenging. I'd say if there's anything challenging right now for me in our career, is getting permits and getting the property and getting rehab material. Not necessarily just because the cost has gone up on a lot of these materials, but also just the availability of materials. I mean, we waited almost 3 months for an electrical panel. I
Oh,
I'm wait, I have a contractor who's still waiting for a bathtub from 6 months ago, like, so we can't finish some of our projects because we're waiting on materials. But on a typical transaction, if I don't have to pull a permit, I can usually buy a property if it's vacant and put it back on the market within 45 days.
Okay. Yeah, no, that you brought up a couple good points there. I mean, the permit process has become a pain. In fact, I'm curious, do you ever do no permits, or you ever do just kind of make ready?
I always do no permits. Actually, that's my problem. Is
Okay.
I would prefer not to have to go through the permit process, and not because I don't want to pay the permit fee. I will gladly, if you just did the permit process, if they did the permit process for me and then just said, here's a check, I need this check, I would gladly give them the money. It has everything to do with their systems and their procedures now. And everything's done online. So I can't imagine being a consumer out there trying to get a permit right now, because that would be a nightmare. Because I feel like I'm a pretty educated human being when it comes to this avenue of the real estate. And, being able to upload a document is not that difficult, but being able to upload it in the format that they want it with the exact, 11 by 17, and one jurisdiction wants it in 12 by this. And, like, each jurisdiction has their own uploads, and then the uploads are too big or too small. And then they tell you what they want. Then they kick you back to the bottom. So it's like, you're frustrated because you don't want to pull the permit, because you're going to be sitting on a project for, I have a permit that I've been working on for 8 months, and I'm not even out of planning. And every time they make us give a correction, they put me back to the bottom of the pile. So it's like 3 weeks again until they figure it out. And then they have another correction. And I'm like, why didn't you catch this on the first one? Why are we going back to round 2? Right. So when we don't pull permits, the problem is, and this is my big advice for investors, I never understood why some investors put, like 123 Main Street LLC, right? 125 Main Street LLC. I was like, why do you keep creating different LLCs? It's such a nightmare and a pain in the butt. Now I kind of get it. So anytime, I don't know how they do it, and they won't tell me how they do it, but they just told me they did it. So the building department has somebody in their code enforcement section that literally runs my name, not my personal name, but the company name. And so they run it weekly. And you know what they do? They send code enforcement by to drive my projects. And guess what? If my project has crews working on it and they walk in the building and they see something that should be permitted, they red tag my building. Wow. So I've been red tagged 3 times in the last year. And so at that point, we were just like, well, they're doing it every single time. So now we're at a point, do we change our name, right? Do we start doing 123 Main Street instead of who we are? Or do we just, go into everything knowing that we're going to hold these things for 6 or 7 months, because that's how long it's going to take us to get a permit?
Wow. I can't believe they're that aggressive. I've definitely dealt with got red tagged, and it was a ADU, and the guy must have been like weekly, was looking at like open houses, listing, when we put it on the market. He knew kind of everything that was going on. And I figured it was just a one-time thing where he had a little bit of a thorn in his side about us, and thinking we were doing something wrong. And anyway, so we had to kind of, not only did it delay the project, but we had to make some adjustments on the ADU just to make it not an ADU. But to think that they're doing like searches on your name, I mean, that's crazy. Well, that's good to know, because I'm sure people out there are going, God, why am I getting red tagged? And you never know, they could be like,
I asked as a joke, I was like, gosh, what do you guys do? Run my name on a daily basis? And the guy goes, actually, we have a department that does that. I was like, seriously? And he said, wow. Yeah. And it's frustrating for them too. Like, I want to light the guy up that answers the phone, or, the person that responds to an email or whatever, but ultimately they feel it too. They're very, very short staffed. Not an excuse for them in any way, shape, or form, because I'd like to wring some of their necks, but, they're feeling the pain of, they don't want to hold our permits, right? Because they're not making any money during the 6 months, right? There's a 6-month process where they're going back and forth with me. They're not making any money on it, right? And then if I decide at that point, like, I don't want to deal with this anymore, and I just throw the permit out and just put the house back together the way it was and resell it, they're not going to make any money. So they're struggling. Hopefully they can go back to in-person permits here in the next, couple months. So that will help alleviate some of this, because an over-the-counter permit right now you can't get.
Right. Yeah, no, it's funny. I used to actually a couple different municipalities where I would literally bring, and there's a place in Los Gatos that has like the most amazing like pastries and stuff, and I'd go get cupcakes and bring in cupcakes, and just trying to get to the top of the pile and trying to get someone to pay attention, because I mean the reality is that the government employee, they're not making enough money to expedite your file. They don't care about you, so you got to just kiss babies and
Yep. You're just a number.
Yeah,
you're just a number to them. Like,
totally.
You're an address. They don't care who you are. You're just an address.
Exactly. So any other just kind of tips that you can throw out there, as far as, I'm just thinking in terms of, both fix and flip and ground up, construction deals. I mean, obviously the permits are a nightmare. You got to really,
permits are a nightmare. It's really about finding your vendors, right? Like, so many people want to flip houses and go into flipping and stuff. And, they're like, oh, I've got $500,000, and like, what can I do? And it's like, great. Well, if you go into it with your 500, you don't want your first flip to be a disaster, right? Your first flip's already going to be a nightmare and a headache for you because you're kind of fumbling around. But if you go into it with, you already have a relationship with your flooring people, and you already have a relationship with the kitchen people and the granite people and stuff like that. You form those relationships and you get those numbers, because those numbers are going to help you with your budget, right? And as long as you, continue to thrive on those relationships, you're going to continue to have the best pricing you can possibly get, right? If you walk into Home Depot and buy everything for your flip, I could outbid you, right? So I'm going to be able to buy a flip higher than what you're going to be able to buy it, because I already have established relationships where I know my painter is only going to charge me, $1.50 a square foot. I know my floor guy is only going to charge me $1.97 a square foot for carpet, because it's relationship building. And I assure them that I will constantly give them my business if they constantly give me their pricing. And so when I go into a project, I mean, you've seen my net sheet before, it's got a budget line item for, pretty much everything. And I'm usually pretty spot on. I mean, sometimes, we get into a project and there's things that we didn't know we were going to have to do. I might go over budget on that. But I mean, when I tell you that my roof's going to cost me $14,000, it's going to cost me $14,000. And so being, having the money is great and one thing, but having the tools as well, your title company, all those ducks in a row, you really want to have your, if you're not an agent, you really want to have your agency in a row, because they're the ones who are going to, really help you and be able to give you the ideas. You buy a house and then you go in, and so many flippers go in and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to create this cool house. And they put all these great things in it. Well, they're putting in the great things that they like, right? Like, does everyone want blue cabinets? The answer is no, not everyone. I would love a blue cabinet, but when I go into a project, I'm not like, oh, well, like blue cabinet here, I'm gonna do a red wall here. You really got to think about the consumer when you're flipping a house. Your job is to pretty much make a house ready for an FHA first time home buyer.
Right. And, appeal to the broad audience.
Right.
Too many people, that's one of the, I guess the main rules of flipping is, don't get personal. Don't focus on your, tastes or, your needs or desires. You got to think about the broad market and also think about the cost. I mean, there's a lot of funny things I'll see in rehabs or, ground up construction deals. And I'm just like, why would you spend the money on that? No one's going to pay you for that.
Right. Well, and we're getting ready to start a ground up over on the coast. And, I have to constantly remind my dad, who's a builder, right? And I have to tell him all the time, like, people don't care about your crown molding. They don't care about these corbels that you want to put under here, like, we're not moving into this house. We're either going to Airbnb it or we're going to sell it, so let's make it to the masses, right? Not everyone likes those ornamental things,
So, by the way, that was, I love talking to you about this stuff, because that was brilliant, knowing your numbers. I mean, if I look back at the deals that didn't go as planned for me personally, it was probably me not over analyzing the numbers and the GC. If you have a contractor, it's like you put too much trust in your contractor. Usually that goes sideways.
My
So
saving grace is that we are the GC. I
yeah,
mean, I say that with a grain of salt as well. And I am a licensed real estate agent, so I'm constantly checking myself. And mainly because there is a conflict of interest on a lot of these things, like I personally buy the property, I drove it, I buy it, I handle the rehab, we're the GC on the job, and then I sell it, right? There's not really a layer of protection. So, I could be my own broker, but then where's my layer of protection? So my broker's license hung at Coldwell Banker, right? My general contractor's license is over here, and so we save money. So we save money because we are a GC. We save money because I am a licensed real estate agent and we aren't having to pay commissions like you normally would. However, the negative to that is you watch yourself on a slippery slope, right? You've done the work to the project and you're disclosing about the project and you're selling the project and you're profiting from the project,
right.
like there's a very gray area. And so you just need to make sure that, you're covering all your bases. But, I feel like we definitely get the upper hand because we have our own GC. And the benefit for me in that is, when a request for repair comes in or, handyman stuff, that people are paying, top dollar for a GC, I'm not paying top dollar for that,
Right.
and dialing in those people, like I can trust my crew to go into all of my homes and, be good people. Whereas if I hired a general contractor, I would be at the mercy of him and his schedule and his time frame. And those things play a huge part in whether or not you're going to get the project. Because if you're going up against me at auction per se, and you have to hire a GC and you have to hire a licensed real estate agent to resell your home for you, I'm going to beat you.
Right. No question. No, I never was my own GC. I always tried to make them. I have a sales background, so I'm always kind of like, almost commission based. It's like, just make enough to keep your business going, but then have all the profit kind of be on the back end, or all their upside be on the success of the project. But
Yep.
I mean, the one better from there is if you're your own GC and control everything in house. I mean, that's huge. And like you say, it's hard. It was always hard to compete with those guys that were a GC or had their own GC.
Well, and right now the market the way it is, if you're going to hold a property, you're going to beat a flipper right now, mainly because prices have gone up and rents have gone up. So if
Right.
and if you're lucky enough to find a property in an Airbnb hot market area, I can pay almost retail. I mean, in some cases, I can pay retail for a property, if it's going to be an Airbnb, because they pencil out so well that it doesn't matter.
So I definitely want to ask you about the Airbnb because that's become super hot and popular with a lot of folks. Before I get there, I'm curious because after walking through one of your Airbnbs, actually, like the one that we walked through was an Airbnb, and you had, I mean, the design was amazing, and what you spent on it was like the lowest I've heard for that level of design. I mean, it was as nice as almost anything I've done in the multi-million-dollar space. And then you've done some cute, cool little tricks in maximizing space and whatnot, which I took notes on actually. But the question is, how do you determine, getting back to the appealing to the broad audience and getting enough, the max number of buyers interested in your property? How do you determine the design? Do you have kind of a standard? Do you, follow, hows and what's popular online, or how do you determine that?
We do a lot of Pinterest searches. Like, mainly, I have a business Pinterest account, and so what it does is, like, if people, I throw a lot of pictures on my Pinterest page, and if we start seeing a lot of people like sharing those pictures or liking those pictures, then we start like looking at those trends. Because I was a big fan of switching over to gold as our hardware, and the investor was like, oh, I don't like gold, we're just going to stick with brushed nickel. I'm like, no, we're going gold. Like, and sometimes, we battle on the design idea, But when you start seeing the Pinterest blow up with gold, when you start seeing, when you get on Amazon and you type in, hardware for your house, right? The first couple that show up are going to be the ones that people have clicked on the most recently. And so it's just following all of that kind of stuff. I don't really watch TV. But I don't really watch shows like that.
You're too busy. You're too busy for TV.
I'm too busy, but also they frustrate me. Like, that's not how auction works. When I watch these shows and people are at auction, with these paddles and stuff, and I'm like, you've never been to an auction. That's not how it works, And then all my friends send me their links, on them, and they're like, is this what you do? Is this what you do? And I'm like, it's nothing like that. So I never look at the TV stuff because I'm like, it just doesn't work like that.
Totally.
And then, it's like our cabinet company that we use. They follow trends, they work with tons of builders and stuff like that. And so if they're like, hey, black's really hot right now, black matte's really hot, so we'll try a house, we'll do one house like that. And if we get a lot of feedback and compliments on it, great, we'll do the next one. And if everyone's just, like, then we know that, we're not going to use black again.
Great feedback. I love it. Yeah, so transitioning into the Airbnb, I'm curious, what could you share? Like, what should you look at? What do you, how is that different? I mean, I guess everyone knows how it's different. It's obviously, you're buying and holding, but it's, short-term rentals. You have, hopefully much higher rents. You can kind of survive and make it pencil with much less, occupancy. So I guess a question to ask you is, how do you determine and I guess analyze an Airbnb project versus, something that's more of a fix and flip?
Well, location is key, obviously. You want to be, within an hour of a very major airport. That's a huge key. Luckily I'm in Sacramento, so that wasn't really hard to do. You need to be near an attraction or a big hospital, right? So the Airbnb that you happen to go to of mine is near UC Davis Hospital and Shriners, right? So we get a lot of guests that stay there that their family members are having surgery or they're going through treatments or whatever. We're near a zoo. We're in the heart of downtown, and so just being in an area where, people are going to want to be attracted to go to. I say that when I have a friend that also has an Airbnb in like a single family residential neighborhood that is in West Sacramento. And I can't think of an attraction, that there's not a hospital right there. There's, the river's closed, but, there's not really an attraction, but they're constantly booked. And it's because the Sacramento area has become a hub for a lot of companies and a lot of businesses and a lot of meetings and stuff like that. And they've really revitalized some areas of downtown and that corridor and stuff. And so we're at a deficit of Airbnbs. So when people, my Airbnb has been, but I think I have 6 vacancy dates over the course of the next 2 months, over the course of the last 2 months, and it's mainly because I don't like one-nighters, right? So if you're only going to stay for one night, I have to really screen that guest because we have had issues. I'm not going to say it's all roses because it's not. Like, I have a door lock that's broken. So right when we get done with this, conversation, I get to go over and figure out what's wrong with the Yale door lock,
Right.
When I look at them, I look at AirDNA is, you're going to spend money when you want to buy an Airbnb because you can't just use MetroList to comp your property, right? You don't care what the resale of the property is at this point. Selling an Airbnb with a book of business, meaning that the calendar is open and you're going to sell the house with the fully, furnished calendar of people staying, is huge. So I don't know what kind of price tag you would put on that, but and it's going to vary per the area, but you're going to put a price tag on being able to buy an Airbnb that has a full book of business already ready to go and getting repeat clients and about your, it's all about your hospitality and stuff. And and getting people to want to come back and write good reviews, because obviously your reviews dictate where you stand on Airbnb's website. And so like I'm considered a super host because I have good reviews, and because I'm pretty accommodating with, pets and, just all the amenities that I have at my place. But when looking at it, I definitely typically wouldn't pay over market value for a house, because I always look at what's my exit strategy. If the bottom falls out, if, something happens to me and I have to liquidate and sell everything, if the investor has to liquidate and sell everything, obviously we don't want to be in the deficit on any of our projects, whether it be a rental or not. And you look at AirDNA numbers. The AirDNA numbers are going to dictate what you can get per night for your property. And it varies all the time. So like, for example, CIM is the big marathon at the end of the year in California, in Sacramento. And so at that time, your pricing is going to go up a little bit because people are coming from all over for that. You follow big events in the area to see too. If we're having a huge monster, concert, Rolling Stones are coming in, and it's the last concert of their lifetime, you're going to raise your prices, so It's about being the downfall to an Airbnb is it's not plug and play, right? You don't just here, you put your lease agreement in, and then in a year, call me if you still want to live here, and I probably raise your rent $100, right? That's not how it works. You're constantly in the app. You're constantly looking to see what other places are going for. So it's a lot of work. You can hire a management company to do it, but that cuts into your profit. Or you just commit to, really doing it. And I think I told you, any new thing that we take on, I commit to doing, right? Like I want to do it. I don't want to hire somebody to do it because I want to know how it's done. Because if I'm paying you 20%, I want to know what you're doing it for.
Right. No, I think that's brilliant. Do it yourself. And in some things I've done that, and others I have not, because I know what I'm not good at. And I think that's a golden nugget right there, as far as just do it, go through the pain, deal with, fix all the issues, especially if it's a model like, if it's new to you, like Airbnb, which, to me, it's relatively new. I wanted to ask you, so AirDNA is it's accurate. You found it's very accurate as far as.
The only thing I don't think is accurate is their occupancy rate. And you can go in and manipulate that in their system. When you pay for the zip codes that you want, you can go in and manipulate that in the system and, just decide, that your occupancy rate's going to be 80%. Like my occupancy rate right now, if you were to pull mine, is 96%. Is it going to be 96% all year long? Absolutely not. But I'm lucky that I have a property in a really great neighborhood, in a really great area. I've gotten return guests, like the feedback is amazing. And I'm near one of the biggest hospitals in California. So, putting an Airbnb, near Stanford would be a great idea. Putting an Airbnb, near big colleges is a really good idea. But really, you've got to make sure your municipality allows for Airbnbs. So the city of Sacramento allows us to hold Airbnbs. The county, this is going to sound strange, of Sacramento does not allow you to hold an Airbnb. You cannot short-term rent an Airbnb in the county of Sacramento unless you live on the property. And then you can only do it for whatever their guidelines are in regards to how many days a year you can do it. Whereas in the city municipality, they look at it differently, and you do need a permit. You do need an operating, account. You need an operating tax account. And so there are things that you have to do to get the permit. So knowing your municipalities obviously is going to be your biggest bet. I did have a friend purchase a property, and then when he went to have it all done, he went to go pull his Airbnb permit, and they were like, "Oh, sorry, we don't give those out anymore."
Oh, wow.
So he's now stuck with a property that, he didn't intend to stay in. He intended to have it be an Airbnb. And so when you go from thinking you're going to make X dollar amount on an Airbnb and knowing that you're going to have to turn it into a long-term rental, it's a hard lesson to learn.
So that's a question that I've had in the back of my mind for a while in dealing with, this model is, what are the chances these municipalities, make the changes? I mean, I haven't can't say that I've experienced where there's been major changes in any of my long-term rentals as far as, being able to do that. I've definitely had some where, like in, Newport Beach, there's, areas that you can't short-term rent. Tried to work around that because they would be amazing short-term rentals. But what do you think as far as like them changing code or, getting too many short-term rentals and people complaining?
Well, I think what you're grandfathered in, you're grandfathered in, a lot of people, like in Tahoe area, there are some people that have been grandfathered in, right? They're not giving any new permits, but they're not going to revoke your old permit. I think that, the more that people become boisterous, and when I say boisterous, I don't mean to taking to Instagram and saying what you feel about Airbnbs, but like really talking to your assemblymen, talking to the people that are in charge, that's what they're there for. They want to know that there's a need for these things and that, you want to do it, and if you don't ask, you're never going to know. That's always my, my motto. So, does it hurt to send an email to them and say, hey, like, I have a property in Fair Oaks, which is in the county of Sacramento, and I'd really like to short-term rental it. What can you tell me? What kind of guidelines are going on? When's your guys' next town hall meeting about this?
Right.
And just become an active member into that, that their job is to work for the people. And if we aren't saying that we want these things or doing these things, they're not going to put it on an agenda item for it.
Exactly. Well, we can have in fact, I was just thinking may have to have you back on and do a master class on Airbnbs because I can't tell you how many people are looking at that model. I mean, in a big way in various other markets, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm doing a training on Monday night at another brokerage about Airbnbs. And so I'll shoot you over my training manual so you can have it.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And then just to touch one thing, everyone thinks that flipping is, roses and rainbows. And I'm not saying that it's not. I mean, I have provided for my family very well, as a single mom. But I will touch on, because everyone asks me this question, have you ever lost money on a project? And when you're doing a grand scheme, if you're doing one project a quarter, it's going to hurt a little bit more when you lose money, right? Exactly. But if you're doing 20 projects a quarter, you kind of look at them and you weigh them all out. So actually somebody a year ago when I did a training asked me the question. And so I really went back and I dove into it and looked at the P&Ls and really looked at, where we were. And we lost money on one property since 2016. And I don't have the books for this current investor from before that. But we knew we were going to lose money. Or actually, we knew when we went into the project that we shouldn't have bought it, right? It was an off-market deal. We had a relationship with the agent. She's brought us a lot of deals, so we didn't want to burn that bridge. So sometimes you suck things up, and we figured we'd be able to figure it out. And it had Pecky cedar siding on the exterior of the home. And it looked like a woodpeck. I thought we had termites. So we ordered a pest inspection, and my pest inspector came out there and he's like, no, it's Pecky cedar siding. And I was like, that is awful. And he's like, right, it is awful. It was great in the 70s. It's not so great now. And buyers instantly think termites because there's holes all over it. I mean, it looks like a woodpecker went to town on this wood. And the number one complaint about the listing was the siding, but it was $50,000 to replace all of the siding. Well, that wasn't in my budget.
Right.
And they had done a conversion of the garage and then built another garage, the previous owners. Well, they didn't do the foundation right. So we had a moisture issue in the house.
Oh my God.
So we had to get a moisture vapor barrier and put it on the ground and redo it was a big to do. And we already knew we were going to lose money. So on top of it, we were really going to lose money at that point. And we ended up definitely losing some money on that project. But we kept the relationship with the other agent. She's brought us 8 deals since then. If we look at it in a grand scheme of thing and we put her on the spreadsheet and all the properties she brought us, did we lose money on that one project? We did, but we made it up on all the other projects.
Right.
So you got to kind of look at that as well. When you're an investor and you're only doing one at a time, losing money hurts. But when when you start getting to the point where you can do 1, 2, 3, and you're building that, and leverage, like leverage is huge. Um, there's no way in this current market that if you have I think, what are you guys at? 20% is what you guys require if you're a seasoned investor.
Actually, season for fix and flip, we'll go to 90, so 10% down, and then 100% of the rehab.
So if you've already done a couple, right, and you kind of have your feet wet, then there's no reason why you should take all your money and buy that property, right? If you have the ability to buy it at auction, great. You're going to have to use your cash, right? But then instantly contact your hard money, investor, because right now leverage is huge, especially if it's going to take 6 months to get a permit, right? Leverage that property, keep buying, leverage, keep buying, leverage, keep buying. Even on hard money deals right now, the interest rates are not bad. Everyone's freaking out right now because interest rates have gone up and stuff like that. I don't know how, what your interest rate was when you first bought a property, but I first bought a property 23 years ago, was my first home that I bought. And it was 8.99. I had an 815 FICO score, and I put 30% down, and I was excited,
Right.
And so, now when I think about it, like, some people are paying 9% on a hard money loan right now. I'm excited about a hard money loan at 9%, and with 1 point. And the reason being is I'm going to make it up, right? If I can leverage your money and take that money that I just used for that property and put it into another property, that's where you're going to be. That's where you're going to be successful right now.
Yeah, no, that I like that idea, as far as not just using leverage to use leverage, or to use leverage because if you don't have the money, you don't have the money, but just to do volume, to be able to spread it out. In fact, I talk to, and I get a lot of guys that come to us that, or we reach out to, that are they're either financing their own deals or using other private money, and they're doing the onesie twosie, and so when things turn, you don't have five, one goes bad, four go well, and you don't have that buffer.
Yep.
So let's see. I think we can wrap it up with. I'm just amazed at people like you, investors like you, that do so much. I mean, you've got how many hats that you wear. How do you manage it all? What would you what kind of feedback could you give us to keeping everything straight? I mean, do you have great staff, or do you not sleep? What
Um,
do you do?
I'm a control freak. I don't have a lot of staff. I don't sleep. No, I do. It's really your systems, right? My systems are pretty dialed in, and when we decided to scale back and not have so much staff, and when auction kind of went away, we didn't need so many drivers and stuff like that. It was just really diving in and getting your systems in place. But I kind of can do this in my sleep at this point. Um, but it's really who you work with, right? My title officers are great. My escrow office, my back end title customer service is great. I couldn't do my job without them. They're really the forefront in me purchasing a property. Having your team, and when I say team, I mean my team consists of my pest control company, my door guy, my title officer, my sales reps, my cabinet maker, like all of these people I consider on my team. And having that in place is huge, but also knowing your limits, creating your boundaries. I could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if I really wanted to, and I have. But you need to create boundaries so that you do have your downtime. If I could give advice, I would say have a separate phone number. Have a personal phone number and a business phone number. I did not do that. Nobody gave me that advice 23 years ago. So I have one phone number, and it really just, I don't work on Sundays. Like, if somebody calls from the Airbnb or whatever, I'm pretty good about on the having somebody on my team take those calls on the weekends or whatever that I'm going to be out of town. That would be my only like boundary cross, is if something catastrophic had happened at an Airbnb, I would definitely be right there to help with that. But taking a 1 day downtime, because in our line of work, it's grueling. I mean, it's talking to people all day long. It's, developing relationships. It's running numbers. I mean, I don't know if you can see my monitors, but like, that's my computer life. I have 3 monitors, like, this is what I
Right.
stare at all day long.
Yeah, you got to get
And
out.
there are
You got to
times,
get out, look at the sun, get some
yeah, there
fresh
are
air
times that
for
I have to
sure.
walk outside and just go, okay, I cannot look at another appliance order form. I cannot look at these numbers anymore. Um, yeah, I really think it's teams. I really think it's, and we only have 5 people on payroll, so it's not like I have a huge team of individuals that directly work for us, but it's the relationships too, like I feel like I have established pretty good relationships with other investors. We bounce ideas and stuff off of each other. We're constantly, hackling each other, but we're also constantly, like building each other and trying to figure out ways to make these, things better in our environment. Um, and research, right? I research, I read a lot, a lot.
Okay, so what are you reading? What's up?
Today I'm reading, what am I reading today? Traction is my book that I have right now.
Oh, I got, I
I
got that
read
back there.
Traction.
I, I,
I
I have
probably
not
read it.
read that one. I
It's
have it and I
probably
haven't read it, and that says a lot.
the
I
best
in
book I've
fact,
ever read.
really,
I
just as far as
I
running a business and managing a business, and okay,
I
that's
wish
great
somebody
to
would
know.
have handed this to me 20 years ago. Now I wouldn't have had I've obviously grown up in 20 years, but I wouldn't have had the mindset that I do now. So I probably would be rereading it anyways. But if you don't have your core values in place and what you're trying to work towards, you're just floundering, like, and say you do land, you don't have your value, you don't really know what you're doing, right? Is your end goal to be a flipper? Is your end goal to make $1 million on, what's your drive, what's your why are you doing this? And then that helps put you into place with what you have to do, right? Like my goal, I'm 42 years old, my goal is by the time I'm 60, I don't want to touch a flip, right? But I also want to have a portfolio of properties that I'm managing. Could I do flips after 60? Of course. But I hope that my kids or my team or somebody else will want to, So my drive right now is like, oh my gosh, you have, 20 years to really just, get as much stuff as you can accomplished. And then, it's like the cherry on the top, like I know
Right,
what I'm going towards, right?
exactly.
And yeah, so Traction is my book right now. That's what I'm reading.
Okay, well I mean that's a good one. There's a couple in that arena that I have and I haven't dove into because I'm more towards the sales and marketing slash kind of real estate side of it. But that's the stuff that, and getting back to like knowing what you're good at and what you're not, and hire what you're not. And so I've usually had either business partners or accountants, people that kind of keep an eye on the finances.
Yes.
Well, I think that's it, Amber. I mean, I have a ton more I can ask you, and I really appreciate the amazing insight and feedback. I mean, that was all like really good stuff.
Yeah.
So I would like to get that your Airbnb training, and maybe we'll do something in the future on that front. But yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, of course.